Hey, Scott, is that a big bowl of stuffing I see you eating?
Yes, I'm preparing for Thanksgiving, one of my two least favorite holidays. But I figured if I stuff the stuffing, I would like it better this Thursday.
Well, that makes sense. And, you might feel some connection with the turkey if you're full of stuffing. So I get you on that,
I want to be closer to my food.
Well, we have a little Thanksgiving surprise for our listeners.
Ooh.
This episode is stuffed with conversation.
Yeah, we stuffed the first half of this episode.
Yeah, so we were, as you see by the title, we were planning to kind of talk about the Babadook, and then we got carried away just catching up because it's been a little while. And
yeah, we really blabadooked over this whole.
We babba-blabbed. But we got carried away, had a good time talking, and we realized also with the holiday, it might be easier to just have some fun talking. So we're going to do a two-parter here where we give our kind of prelude to the Babadook of how we got to that moment of watching the film and what else we've been watching. And then next week we'll have our full Babadook review for you guys. So this also gives you a couple days to rewatch the film. It's rentable and on Amazon Prime.
Yep.
It just costs a couple bucks up there. You could buy it at any store that sells Blu-rays and DVDs. We always recommend Blu-rays.
It's the ideal way to watch a movie at home.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, so this is a classic two-parter where in the first part we don't really talk about the subject that much.
Yeah.
But you guys will have this one as a little Thanksgiving treat, just like your mama's famous pumpkin pie. And then next week we're gonna go in on the Babadook. So enjoy. The topics this week on our halfie here. We got the Crimes of Grindelwald. We got Parks and Rec. We got a lot of Darren Aronofsky. We got our poll choices.
Mm-hmm.
But we got the Wheel of Time. We got a lot going on. So
yeah.
And also, you know what? It's a fun one.
My favorite part is when we fan cast who could play Aragorn in the Amazon Lord of the Rings series.
Yeah. And I think both of our choices are spot on.
Yeah.
So let's leave that there and get to the episode. Here comes the theme.
Hello and welcome to the Critical Breakdown, the podcast where we start at the bottom of Rotten Tomatoes and work our way to 100% fresh. I'm Max.
And I'm Scott, and today we're talking The Babadook, rated 98% on Rotten Tomatoes, and in a roundabout way, Max's choice.
My choice thrust upon me by my co-host, which I questioned at the moment of thrusting, but didn't push far enough to really check it. So I'll take some credit there.
I thrusted and really pushed deep, and it stuck.
Well, let's give some background here. On a previous episode, we had a live episode, super fun. It was great chatting with everyone. We threw out all of our nominees for the 90s because we were doing things different, wanted people to know what's coming up, and we got to 98%. And we were reading out our selections, and Scott's was it's coming up, so we'll say that later. But mine was listed as the Babadook. But then we looked at our poll choices, and I noticed there was one on there that's literally one of my favorite films ever made, and would be in my top 10. And I was like, "Are you sure I didn't pick that one?" Scott's like, "No, I'm pretty sure it's this one." And long story short, this past week, Scott was checking out his emails. Was like, "Hey man, did you change your choice?" I was like, "No, what are you talking about?" He was like, well, the original email says your choice was The Wrestler, and we watched The Babadook." And I was like, "Oh, that's weird." So I went back and listened and heard all that. So basically, I did originally pick The Wrestler. It got mixed up in translation, and we ended up watching The Babadook, which I do love, actually. It's a really great movie, and it would be in my list of favorite horror films, probably my top 3 favorite horror films. So I couldn't really take too much issue with us watching it, so I do accept it as my choice, kinda.
You guys might be wondering why you haven't heard from Jason or Todd recently. They've been let go due to this fumble of theirs. I resent the idea that this was on me. I know I run the intern program, but so I will take the accountability, but I just have to be insistent that this was on Todd and Jason, who have both been let go. They have since asked us for references as they seek new employment. I believe Todd had applied for a production assistant job with Paramount Pictures, and we left him an awful reference.
Yeah, and Jason has been rumored to maybe be our next attorney general, so he'll do fine there.
Yeah, but we might be called to the stand.
Yeah.
Character references. But anyways, that's my bad. The ironic thing is, I have no taste for horror as a genre, though I have been doing a little better, I'd say. But I even questioned, Max was like, okay, when do you want to watch the Babadook? And I was like, I don't want to watch it. And it was essentially my fault that we watched it. So
it's a dramatic irony.
All is well. The Babadook was, in our initial write-up, it was a poll choice, and the rest was Max's pick. So we're just doing a little flippy-floppy. Let's talk about them poll choices. Yeah,
so we start off with The Wrestler, which I will be doing a strong push for myself.
Yeah, one could even argue that Max would prefer to watch The Wrestler over even The Babadook, which was his choice.
Yeah, you could argue that. Good. So we have The Wrestler, and that's Darren Aronofsky. It's probably his most straightforward film he's ever made. And I think,
maybe. I
think it benefits from that. Because, he's very much a filmmaker who does his own thing each time. And
he's earned that right.
Yeah, he's earned that right. I think he's
got good creative vision.
I think he is a really great filmmaker, even though sometimes I don't like his films. And I think that is fine. And I think that's good for a creator. Art shouldn't always be like a success in that sense where everyone just loves it. It should make you think. It should make you talk. And I will say, even his worst films that I've seen, they make me think, they make me talk. So I respect him for that. But this one is one I truly love. I think Mickey Rourke gives a spectacular performance in it. So
I'm sorry, Mickey Bork over here is barking in his sleep.
He probably heard me say the name Mickey, so Yeah, basically Mickey Rourke does the performance of a lifetime here. I would say it's a really good role. But yeah, so I'm pretty excited to maybe watch The Wrestler. My choice.
I haven't seen it. I wish you had initially picked it.
Initially.
But I have a sour taste in my mouth on Darren Aronofsky because of I thought Mother was just bullshit. But I haven't watched much of his other stuff in a while. I haven't seen Noah. I'd like to watch Noah. Black Swan freaks me out a little too much, but I'm excited for the opportunity to rewatch it. I will vote for The Wrestler because that was your original intention. Fans, let's get Max what he wants.
Give me what I want.
That makes it sound like you're very demanding.
Yeah, let's make sure
Max what he wants. This prima donna over here. What else we got, Maxie?
Next up, we have another movie that I love and that we've both watched before and discussed on the pod, so that would be interesting. And it's very close to what we've watched recently.
Yeah.
Which is E.T. the Extraterrestrial.
Yeah.
We've knocked out a couple Spielbergies, some heavy hitters. This is definitely among that classification.
This is among his heaviest.
Yeah, it's beloved.
Yeah, we've talked about this one fairly extensively. So,
if you don't know about E.T., I don't know what you're doing with your life. Yeah. So
I'll be curious if people even want us to watch it, because it's like, what could we add?
I mean, we could, if
Here's
anything,
a new thought on E.T.
We could even take a different angle and just do a whole episode on how E.T. has influenced other things. Just find all the connections between it and other pieces. I don't know. We could do something.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. If
it wins, we'll take it.
If the masses demand it.
Yeah. So next up, we have a film that was very controversial at its awards ceremony.
Yes, and it makes sense that it would be, because we're talking Sense and Sensibility.
That's not what I was talking about at all.
Oh,
but
is that is on this line though, right?
It is. Tell us about the award ceremony, Scott.
You were in the left lane. I was passing on the right.
You were speeding by on the right, flicking me off, sir.
Yeah. I twisted. I was twisted and shouting. I have not seen Sense and Sensibility.
It's
I'm a big Ang Lee fan.
Yeah.
This was one of his first English language films, was it not?
It was, and I think it's a really good movie, honestly. Obviously, a lot of other people do too. Because it's
98% of critics agree.
It's very well received. It's based off the work by Jane Austen.
Yeah, who is easily my favorite author.
The screenplay was also written by Emma Thompson, which is interesting.
Oh, that is interesting.
Yeah, and she stars in it as well, I believe. Well, she's one of the stars of it. There's quite a few.
Yeah.
You have Hugh Grant, you have Kate Winslet, you have Tom Wilkinson, Alan Rickman is very awesome in this. So it's really well made.
Yeah.
It always feels like a longer film because it has a slower pace to it because it is, an Austen novel, so you're not expecting fast action and stuff like that. But it is pretty well paced character drama. Like you said, it's Ang Lee, and this kind of put him on the map in the West for common audiences, I would say.
Yeah, yeah.
And
what's interesting is, and I don't know how they got there, but after Sense and Sensibility, there was so many spinoffs and stuff that they did the series Sense8 on Netflix.
Wow.
That was really good.
Yeah.
I'm on fire today.
Yeah, dude. But no, so if you watch this one, I'd be fine with it. I obviously want The Wrestler, but it's a good movie, and I haven't seen it in a couple of years. So I will say, of this list, it's the one I probably would be the least excited to watch, even though I'm still excited about it. So that goes to show you it's a good movie,
It would be hard for us to find a 98% that there's no interest level in.
Exactly, yeah. Well, one that a lot of people were interested in was Moonlight. Which is the one I was saying was covered in controversy at its award ceremony.
Right, at the Oscars.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And Barry Jenkins, the writer and director of Moonlight, his second film is coming out very soon. I don't know when it's going to get a wide release, but it's If Beale Street Could Talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's getting a little bit of award buzz. I don't think it's getting the same that Moonlight ended up at, but Moonlight's just a really good movie. It's very I love it. It has this dreamlike, almost ethereal quality to the filming of it.
Yeah.
And it very much takes place in 3 distinct acts, and it really serves the story well because it's the same character at different phases of his life. That's cool. And you can see how the prior events affect the act that you're in, and it's a really good movie. Have you had a chance to see it yet, Max?
I have not seen it yet, so it's actually this and The Wrestler what I'm really hoping for.
Yeah.
Obviously, it can only be one, so it's I'm still kind of pitching for The Wrestler, but
yeah,
I'd be down to watch this one and talk about it. I mean, it's it's made a big impact on some people, so
for sure.
I think having not even seen it, it's already come up in multiple discussions in my life since it's hit the theaters, so that's pretty interesting. And the fact that it, had that showdown in quotations with La La Land, which is a film that I enjoyed on a technical level, but I honestly haven't thought about it too much since then. So it'd be interesting to watch this one and see which one makes a bigger impact in my life personally.
Yeah.
And they have nothing to do with each other other than just competing for the same award. That's all.
Yeah, just
for the record.
And the fact that they had that moment at the end.
Yeah, exactly. So
they will always be entwined because of that now.
And it's kind of a disservice to each other for that, but it's also kind of the fun of cinema, Yeah,
it's both. It's a fun. It'll always be a fun discussion,
For our summer blog series we did a while ago, I watched Ordinary People, which famously won Best Picture and beat out both Raging Bull and The Elephant Man, and a couple others. 1980 or 1981. I don't remember which. I think it might be for 1980, but took place in 1981. Is that how that works? Yeah. So I think it was like that. But Ordinary People was good. I watched it. It was a fine, well-made film. Very emotional. Solid cinematography across the board.
Yeah, it's a character drama, right?
Yeah. It's like how I think Spotlight's better, but it's like how Spotlight was very much made to tell the story.
Yeah.
It's that. And I mean, you know, you could argue the same with both The Elephant Man and Raging Bull, but those are films that are like used in film school to teach filmmaking, you know?
There's more like spectacle and there's more like, I don't know, there's more like Hollywoodness to them. Yeah.
So it's what I'm getting at with that is, you know, there are movies sometimes where you could see the merits of them and they're great and all that. And then you could compare it to other films and kind of draw some conclusions from the era and all that. And I think that's kind of an interesting take, and that'd be interesting to look at with these films like in the modern day. But at the same time, I mean, you got to evaluate them on their own merits. You can't really compare the content. So
for sure. But you, the listener, will have to compare these 4 films and vote for one. Or you could vote for 2. You could vote on our website, and then on Twitter, you could split your votes.
Yeah.
Which is a very common Survivor strategy.
Ooh.
So that way, in case like Moonlight plays a hidden immunity idol, you've still got 1 vote for Sense and Sensibility out there.
True. Yeah.
And what I said makes sense.
It's confusing me, but I'll just agree with it.
You know what's funny, Max?
What's that?
I bet that sentence that you just said is what a lot of people said once they watched Fantastic Beasts: Crimes of Grindelwald.
You just watched that, didn't you?
Oh my gosh, I did.
And it sounds like you were not the biggest fan.
I thought it was a real stinky turd.
Worse than the first?
The first is better. The first I found dull, and I fell asleep when I tried watching it. But there was enough to the world building, and there is an interesting thread in there, like the Credence plot I did find interesting in the first one. But then they don't move those core plots and characters that they started forward in a satisfying way in this movie. The writing is legitimately awful in this film. It's like all exposition. I don't know if I like Eddie Redmayne's performance or not. I like vacillate on Eddie Redmayne because he seems kind of like smug, maybe like he's very like he very much is an award kind of chew the scenery actor. But there are performances I like of his. His performance in Jupiter Ascending is a guilty pleasure of mine.
It's not even guilty
so
for me.
Over the top and bad, but it's like so good. I actually really liked him in Les Mis, even though he sounds like Kermit the Frog when he sings.
Yeah, I'll agree.
I like that about him. And so here, like his Newt Scamander is like a sheepish, maybe autistic, strange character. He walks with like a limp and a hunch for some reason. I don't think he made eye contact with another character in this whole movie. And his lines just kind of fall out of his mouth. He doesn't really say them. But for some reason, I still like the character. So that's a weird relationship for me. And
it sounds like they played up more of that from the first film, because he did that like about half the time, but he still interacted better. Well, I can't compare, but he was a little bit more interactive with people. I don't know. It's kind of it sounds like in Batman Begins, Batman used a raspy voice. Then in The Dark Knight, he like swallowed a bag of gravel before each take.
It's almost like a caricature of that initial character to an extent. But the thing that really hurts the movie is there's like a million characters, and really there needs to be like 7. And there's so much fan service. They're packing so much into the movie that is so unnecessary and just detracts, because it's like, okay, this character was in the Harry Potter movies. What are they doing here? And then they will play a totally unimportant role. Like, I don't want to spoil anything. There's a few things that'll become immediately obvious if you watch it or even watch all the trailers, but there's so many moments like that where it's like there's only 8 families in the Harry Potter universe, because everybody in this 1920 story is an ancestor of people in the Harry Potter books as well. And
it's pretty silly.
It's just weird.
Just tell me this. Is there a Potter in the film?
No, there's no Potter, but
that's good at least.
I mean, they're at Hogwarts in the film. You know, there's Dumbledore and stuff. Yeah, and so like there's McGonagall and everything. And
is she played by a younger actress?
A very young actress.
I guess she would be. She's a little bit older though, but I don't remember.
See, that's the, like I don't know. It's very weird. And then Johnny Depp is a problem. He's not very good in the movie.
I've heard mixed stuff. I heard some people say he was like very fun to watch in it, and then I've heard some people say, you know, that
I think my bigger problem is with the character.
Yeah,
like,
I could see that.
They had to say, okay, we have to make Grindelwald evil. How do we make Grindelwald look worse than Voldemort? So he like punts his pet out of a flying carriage in the first 5 minutes.
Jesus.
He vapes throughout the movie.
Does he?
Yep. He shows a lot of imagery from Auschwitz during a big speech.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, and then he lights a lot of people on fire.
Is he?
So like, they establish him as being very evil, but like in ways that are like campy, and they don't like give him like real motivation. You have no idea why he's doing these things. It's just like he's bad, and like he's really bad.
Yeah.
And there's going to be 2 more movies where they'll expand on him more, but I don't know. It was weird. And then here's my favorite part, though, what I wanted to talk about. In a flashback scene, Grindelwald is played by
Jamie Campbell Bower.
Breakdown's favorite, Jamie Campbell Bower.
Yeah. Well, that's consistent with the other films then. Because
okay. I didn't even realize that.
I think somewhere between movie 6 and movie 8, they had flashbacks with that.
Yeah.
Or they were supposed to. I think they did. Yeah, because
I feel like I remember I was talking about
when he steals the wand, the Elder Wand.
Yeah.
That's when he's in there.
No.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So
he appears for about 12 seconds in this movie in vape smoke during flashbacks. It's a strange movie. There's about 30 characters that don't need to be in it. I just wish I liked it better. There's a big reveal at part of the movie that I saw this with 2 friends of mine who are huge Potterheads, like very much into it. I'm not as into Harry Potter. Like I like it. I read the books for the most part. I enjoyed the movies, but I don't like really devour the world.
Yeah.
And this reveal, twist, whatever you want to call it, infuriated the 2 of them to no end.
All right.
And
we're going to cut this part out, and then I'll give my instant non-spoiler reaction. I want to hear this twist. I'll cut right here, and I'll be back with my anger or my delight. Spoil me, bro. Okay, well, let's go back into it.
Yeah.
And here's my thoughts on the spoiler Scott just gave me. It sounds pointless. Yeah. It sounds weird. It makes me somehow less excited to watch the movie.
Yeah.
And I think hardcore Potterheads will hate it.
Yeah. Max was actually that cut we had was an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Max was weeping.
Yeah. I was inconsolable. I almost quit the podcast.
Yeah. But we're back for now.
So
that's the Crimes of Grindelwald.
Sounds like crimes indeed.
Yeah. Hey, there you go. That's really the only crime they show.
Nice.
Do you want to know any of the like stupid fan service stuff?
Do you think they count as spoilers?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
All right, I'll drop a here be spoilers.
Here be spoilers.
Yeah, let's hear them.
Like Nagini, the snake, is in the movie as a human being. Nicholas Flamel is in the movie for no reason.
Yeah.
Every character is like a Lestrange. Those are like the biggest 3.
Some of that I get. I'll say I get the family names being common. That's the only thing I can see that you can argue as canon, because in the books they talk about the pure bloods are very interbred and tight knit and stuff like that. Sure. And so I get that. If they just did that, I'd be like, it's a little fan servicey, but it's fine because you could do fan service that works within a world. The frustrating thing about Lita Lestrange's character is she doesn't do anything and she fucking dies. Yeah, that is frustrating.
And they present her as like this, like she loves Newt, but Newt's probably autistic, so he doesn't realize it. So she's engaged to his brother, who I don't even think she and his brother talk for more than 8 seconds of the movie. And so it's just super weird that you'd introduce a character that's seemingly important, that has this important family, and then she would die. Like, I don't know.
That is
it's a lot of weird decisions. And like, I have problems with the filmmaking. This should be your excuse to make this big, bombastic, colorful action scenes because it's magic. But David Yates has like a very muted color palette.
Yeah.
Everything is gray. There's an opening scene that's like a flying carriage being chased by wizards. And in the dark. All the horses are black. The carriage is black. It's raining and storming. You can't see anything. It's so stupid. And all the action scenes are like that. So I'm not going to go any deeper, even though I went much deeper than I expected to. But
yeah, I think some series benefit by having different voices in them. And I think these two...
Harry Potter is one of those series.
Yeah, I think these two did great with... they did fine with the original Harry Potter series films. Yeah. That's fine. Leave it where it was. And I think if they really wanted to make something cool, they should pass the torch to new creators.
Yeah. I don't think they will.
No. From what's already slated, the two of them are handling all 5 films.
It's either 4 or 5.
They've announced 5. Who knows what will happen?
I'm pretty sure that all the scripts are already written.
Yeah.
And I'm sure this will make buco bucks. The theater that we saw it in was full. But... we'll see.
That's based off the economics of Thomas Bucco.
Yeah, Switzerland's economist Thomas Bucco.
Well, it's interesting to see that they're still going film by film, which is the old Harry Potter standard, instead of doing the more kind of auteur film them all at once and release them anyway, which Lord of the Rings did, because they knew you kind of knew with that one if you did it right. You can do that.
It was going to be a home run.
And it was the first of its kind in that sense of taking, like a successful epic series and making that and into one big thing. And you have a couple of years to do reshoots and stuff like that. So it works out. But apparently, like we said previously, James Cameron's taken that with his much beloved Avatar series.
Yeah.
Which is fine.
I think with Avatar and with the original Harry Potter's... the reason you film them all back to back like that is because they're kids.
Yeah,
like the main characters of the Avatar sequels, I'm pretty sure are children.
Yeah, that's
like
what
I saw a cast picture and there was like 7 kids.
Yeah.
So you have to, because if you don't, then by the 3rd movie, your 9-year-old is being played by a 20-year-old.
Yeah.
Which works sometimes. Tobey Maguire did it.
Yeah.
But,
well, I was telling you with the first Fantastic Beasts film. I thought Ezra Miller's character was supposed to be like a teen or something, but he seems, he's an older actor. So it very much confused me because in my head, I picture him as like a bowl cut schoolboy type of character, but I don't think he was. It's just that's what my head is thinking.
That's so hot.
Yeah. Yeah. No, so, you could just use older and spin him younger, but who knows what James Cameron's doing, man. We won't know till we see that, and it'll be very confusing.
Yeah, and that's like 2020. It'll probably be like 90 at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's like there's a new technology that you actually die when you watch the movie.
And you wake up in a different universe.
I'm in Pandora and I'm fucking a dragon cat.
Hey, that's a sound drop. Yeah, well, it sounds like your what you've been watching is a little bit more exciting than mine.
It's a little fresh.
A little freshy. Mine is still my rewatch of Parks and Rec.
Great.
The series that, I much love. So I'm having a good time rewatching it. It's fun. Like visiting my old friends again. But I will say I have also started reading a new book.
Ooh, what'd you read? And that's not how you say that sentence, but...
I purchased this book a while ago. It's been sitting on my shelf, and what's held me from getting into it is there's a whole lot more after this one, and it is book 1 of the Wheel of Time, the Eye of the World.
How do you like it?
I'm only a couple chapters in right now. It's pretty fun. It very much feels like, and I know this was I think a 90s book, maybe, or an 80s, late 80s, early 90s.
I think it might be late 80s.
Yeah, so at that era, I know pretty much if you want to release a fantasy book, you had to emulate some of Tolkien. Not a lot, just kind of do that same setup because that's what people were wanting still. And I know him and George R. R. Martin are kind of two of a couple of the authors who pushed out of that eventually. So I'm enjoying it so far. It's definitely... the first few chapters are setting up the world. I thought the prologue was very interesting because it's like it's deep in there. You don't know what's going on in that prologue. And I love when fantasy books do that. So there's like 13 of them. I know he died but passed on the notes. So this is kind of a long-term commitment to read through them if I really enjoy this first one. And I've heard it's best to read the first 3 as like a trilogy and then move to the next 3 and kind of follow a format like that. So
I've read the first two, and the only reason I stopped is because when I was reading them like in a very condensed period and listening to the audiobooks at the same time, and when I was doing a lot of traveling for work, and then I stopped the traveling and put them down. So I want to get back into them because I really liked them. They're really interesting. It's such deep fantasy.
Yeah. It's what I like is it's the surface level aspects are familiar enough where you can kind of just pick up what's going on, but it is a whole new world for me. So it's, it's finding out a bunch of new stuff, kind of just arriving here and not knowing what's going on. It's fun in books, and I've been bad at reading books this year. So I want to get a head start on 2019 so I can make sure I read a lot.
I was actually thinking about that too. Like I haven't been reading very much.
A couple of years ago, I did it was my New Year's resolution to always be reading a book for the entire year. And I read like 10 or 12 books basically that year.
That's good.
Yeah, it felt really good. And I want to get back into that. So
you could cheat on that New Year's resolution. And I could be like, oh yeah, I'm still working on The Stand. I haven't read it in like 9 months, but I'm like 300 pages in.
It had to be, I was continuously reading the books. Like it couldn't be more than a day or two of a break. So yeah, it's I'll give more updates on it because I know it's big up there for the fantasy world, and I do love some good fantasy books. So
yeah, and I want to say that they didn't they just announce, and I feel like they always announce this, but I think Amazon is going to make a show. It
was optioned at least 2 years ago, and I think they're still moving on it. But I think once Amazon got the Lord of the Rings rights, they put everything into that basket. So
well, this does say as of October of 2018 that it has officially been greenlit by Amazon.
Nice. That's awesome.
So, and it's pretty recent.
Yeah. No, I believe that, and I think if they're looking at the big picture with how successful Game of Thrones has been and that it's winding down, that this is the time to try to push the next big fantasy series. So it makes sense why they're pitching out a couple.
Yeah. So they can do Lord of the Rings, and then they can also, this worked, could keep you going for years if it's done right, And
honestly, this one doesn't have anything besides the books holding it back in sense of like fan reception. And garnering new viewers. So it might be easier to do something like this versus doing a Lord of the Ring, Aragorn's biography series, or doing... Is
that what their series is going to be?
It's apparently kind of chronicling him from when he was younger up until... and it's still unclear if it's supposed to be tied in with the movies or not.
Yeah.
I've heard back and forth on that. But,
Who's going to play Aragorn? Who would you cast?
Man, I would probably, honestly... I got 3 options here. Unknown is always your best bet. Well, not always, but it's usually your best bet for starting fresh. But since they might be tying in, you kind of want to tap into some other things. That's right, Nikki.
Mickey, we don't need to do an unknown. It's fine.
I would, depending on the age, and this is just me kind of scoots baiting you, I would love to see someone like Timothée Chalamet playing a young Aragorn. He'd be way too emotional in a good way. So, because you could go more the brawny badass Aragorn thing, but
the brawny badass, that's actually the name of book 9 of the Wheel of Time series.
But yeah, no, I think he doesn't really know who he is for the first couple decades of his life. So it could be cool to have someone kind of tapped into more of an emotional side of acting. But yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, other than that, you could find somebody who's been in some fantasy stuff. It depends on what age they're going for.
How about this? All right. Aragorn's background's a bit of a mystery, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're going to do a comedic weight loss Aragorn starring Josh Gad.
God, you love your Josh Gad casting.
He's better than people think.
Is he better than, what's his name, Dan Fogel?
Yes.
Oh, okay, wow.
I have a fresh instance of Dan Fogel in my life that wasn't the best. So.
Oh, he wasn't good in it?
He was okay, but the plot that he was involved with was
okay.
Not developed right.
I don't think he wrote it, but
no, but I think I'm really interested in that Lord of the Rings series. I'm pretty sure they said that they're investing $1 billion in it. Is that right?
It's something like that.
That number feels like I'm just making it up, but I want to say that might be real.
I mean, they put a ton of money into it.
Yeah.
That's all that needs to be known. Is like it might be one of the highest priced television buyouts ever.
For sure. So it'll be interesting. And then Wheel of Time is one of those that I think it'll be a challenge to adapt because there's so much there.
Yeah.
But like you were saying, the fact that it maybe to a totally mainstream audience is more unknown could work in its benefit. Like, not saying there's not a passionate fan base behind it, because there is. But that was the same situation with Game of Thrones, where before the show, the books were popular with like real hardcore fantasy fans, but people didn't know it, so they were open to seeing things. And so when you see Josh Gad out there, you're not like, that's Viggo Mortensen's role, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Like with I'm just gonna keep moving on that one, but with Game of Thrones, on my list of books to read for years has been The Wheel of Time, as well as a series called A Song of Ice and Fire, and then I kept hearing about Game of Thrones, and it took me even like a month to put together that is a Game of Thrones book one of A Song of Ice and Fire. Yeah. Because I had just forgotten, because I've always known the series as that, as you know.
That's what it's called.
Yeah. So it didn't even cross my mind for a little bit. Then I was like, oh yeah, that's that. I'm definitely going to watch this. And then when I saw the little bit I saw, I was like, this is going to be my favorite show for a couple of years. So I'm glad I'm going to watch it. So.
And they just announced April 2019 is when it's coming back.
Yeah. And they're saying like there's some catchphrase they're using it, something for the throne, like quest for the throne or battle for the throne. I don't know.
I think it's like hashtag who sits
come for the throne or who sits. Yeah. They're pushing it already.
I think it's hashtag come on the throne.
Yeah, Jon Snow.
Yeah. Max, guess how many words are in the Wheel of Time series?
1 million.
4.4 million.
Jeez, I was way off.
Yeah, that's 15 books of when you include the prequel.
Yeah.
So
there's a prequel?
Yeah, it's called New Spring. It came out. It was the 11th book of the series to be released, but it takes place 20 years prior to The Eye of the World.
That's cool. See, man, that shit's cool. I like that.
That's
kind
really
of
cool.
stuff.
Yeah. I also like these titles. They sound like very generic fantasy, but there's a reason that they sound generic fantasy. It's because they sound cool.
Yeah.
Like The Eye of the World, The Dragon Reborn, The Path of Daggers. Like, we could come up with titles like that. Like, come up with one right now.
The Bones of the Past.
That's really good.
You get me one. Give me one.
The Twig of Twilight.
Honestly, it sounds a little silly at first, but then when you think of it, it sounds very good.
It sounds silly because a twig is the weakest stick. Like, you couldn't come up with like, dude, if I said like the
hold on. The weakest stick is a good one.
That's actually the name of the Aragorn prequel series. They say a forest is only as strong as its weakest stick.
That's what he was raised believing.
Don't put that in the episode. I want to use that.
It's in there, but Scott calls it first.
Dibs.
So we're getting super distracted.
Speaking of Scott calls it, I got 90 seconds to call our next shot, baby.
All right.
I'm going to keep the time locally, Max, but explain to the fans what we're doing here. Well,
this is the 90. This is a segment where we are pitching our next big podcast adventure. As you guys might know, we are coming to an end of our Rotten Tomatoes countdown, and we need to know what's coming up. So each week we're picking, we're pitching to each other as well as to our audience some ideas, and we're just building upon this great chemistry here and seeing where we end up. And
I like that.
Yeah, I really like that. We are ranking them in our podcast idea power rankings, and one day we will announce what's next.
Yes. And it could be this. This is our 9th idea coming up.
The key that I somehow forgot to mention is we have 90 seconds to pitch it.
Yes. And that 90 seconds is unfettered for the pitcher. There's no batter to hit away. I don't know. I'm losing it. But I'm going to put my 90 seconds on the clock, Max. And then I'm going to take it away starting now. You know, Max, we picked movies as our podcast idea. 1, because we enjoy movies, and 2, because everyone enjoys movies. So our next idea needs to be something as universally done, maybe not necessarily enjoyed, because it really depends on the content of this action. But everybody poops, Max. We all know this. And that's why our next podcast is The American Anus. I think many people listen to our podcast from the toilet, and it's time for us to talk about everything that goes on while a human being shits, from both a scientific standpoint, from a social standpoint, and from an innovation standpoint. We're talking toilet paper brands. We're talking plunger styles. We're talking the little like tiny toilet seat, or that big open one that's real nice room for your turds to splash around in. We're talking about hemorrhoids. We're talking about bidets. We're talking about squatty potties. And you know what? We're also talking bathroom etiquette. You're in a public restroom. Maybe you recognize someone walking out. You don't say anything to them, Max. I know you agree with me on this, but not everybody agrees with that. We're going to talk about those types of etiquettes. We're going to talk about it on the American Anus, a Critical Breakdown podcast. And that's time.
All right.
Yeah.
So if you guys are interested in that one, let us know on the podcast idea power rankings.
Yeah. Do you have any questions?
Not many.
Okay.
It's a lot about butts and pooping.
A lot about butts and pooping, yeah.
Usually,
but here's the thing: if you can tear down the stigma about it, then you can have a really honest human discussion.
I agree.
Nice.
I just it's I'll be there for the fart sections. I'll say that'll be my favorite sections. We just talk about farts.
Well, if we do pick this, you'll have to be there for all the sections. But
but what I'm saying is, I'll probably check out a lot of times if we're getting too involved in the poop discussion. But I'll definitely be there for some.
Check out, then it's just me talking for 30 to 45 minutes about poop. So,
or as I call it, Tuesday.
You know, I can see we're recording this remotely due to some
poop. No, some
crap. And I can see Max on the video, and I know where I lost him is when I mentioned hemorrhoids. I
definitely had a weird reaction to that one. No, it's much like you mentioned, discussing things in the bathroom.
Yeah.
I go back and forth with bathroom talk. So.
I feel like you're anti-bathroom talk.
I don't talk in bathrooms, that's for sure.
Exactly.
But, it happens.
Yes. Well, we'll see if this podcast happens.
Yeah.
We're looking forward to listener feedback. I believe the clubhouse leader is either still This American Fife or I had heard some good feedback for what was it, the Undiscovered Country Boy?
Oh, did you?
Yes.
What'd you hear?
My sister Sarah texted me and said that she liked the idea and that she could send us to her husband's and my brother-in-law's family farm.
There we go.
For some extra learning to learn how to bale hay and stuff.
Hell yeah, dude.
Yeah, so there's some interest there, and there's some good infrastructure there too. So,
all right.
Yeah.
It's exciting stuff. Scott, it sounds like you're
I'm stuffed.
I was gonna say it sounds like your oven alarm's going off. It sounds like your turkey's roasted.
Yeah, that's a good like line you could use. Like your turkey's roasted.
That turkey's roasted.
Well, Max, where can the good people find us this Thanksgiving?
You can find us pitching casting calls to Amazon, or you can find us at thecriticalbreakdown.com. Check out our polls by going to thecriticalbreakdown.com/vote.
Yeah.
You can find us on Twitter, where we'll also be running a poll. You can find us on Facebook and on Instagram. You can find me watching more Parks and Rec, because that's really all I've been doing, or reading the Wheel of Time series. Or you can find me on Twitter at Max Rivera Film.
You can find me writing my new fantasy novel, The Twig of Twilight. I think that's what I called it.
Yeah.
Or you can find me on Instagram at breakdown_Scott, or on Letterboxd at Stenin2. Check out my full write-up on the crimes of Grindelwald. I pretty much said it all here, but I'll say more there.
Yeah, do it.
Of course, the music is done by Jason Brown.
Artwork's done by Josh Rivera.
And Walter's the podcast, Little Turkey.
And to all of our listeners, if you can count how many Mickey Borks are in this episode, you will get Scott here to post a picture dedicated to you on his Instagram.
Yeah, sure. Of Mickey.
Of Mickey. Yeah, it's just a picture of Mickey.
Yeah, it won't be me.
But it's a really good picture, so you should definitely count the borks. Comment on our Instagram post, and we'll get that picture out there for you.
How many borks do you count? And happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Gobble, gobble.
We're ending on that.